Hello, everybody. Welcome to Athletic Definition. My name is Coach Ray Z. Today, I welcome Erin, aka Brutal Viking. Thank you for being here. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you. And I want to start off by thanking you for taking the time out to be here today. And this is your first time to Fireside, so welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, have trained into quite the Jiu Jitsu monster, devastating everybody along your path. Uh, but I typically like to get started just to find out, when you were a kid, were you active? Did you like to work out?
Yeah, definitely. I was in sports basically my whole life. My mom was a swimmer. My dad, he rode bicycles and ran. And so, just like out of the womb, I was in the pool like from day one. I started swimming competitively as a 6 year old. And I swam all through high school and also in college as well. So, always very active.
Yeah, see, I remember you were a competitive swimmer, but I couldn't remember if you did it in college or not. So,
I did.
how was that?
It wasn't the best time of my life, unfortunately. Right before I had some medical issues, literally the summer before I went off to college. Not many people know this, but I actually started experiencing grand mal seizures,
Oh, wow.
and so that took me out of the pool because the doctors couldn't figure out why I was having this like late onset epilepsy. And so they were always concerned, like if you have a seizure in the pool, like you could drown, you could die, whatever. So my years in college, swimming was a little hit and miss, and it was in those years that I actually started to burn out on swimming because it was just so hard to be like in and out of training and not being able to compete at a high level. So
And
just
yeah,
in deep right in the beginning.
yeah, I didn't know that. So now, was that something that was like curable, or obviously you have it some sort of control to be
Yeah,
so competitive now?
it's really bizarre. It's still a mystery to me about why it happened. But I was, on medications and things like that throughout college, and then I was dealing with it for about maybe 6 or 7 years, and then they stopped, and I haven't had one in over a decade. So here's hoping that I never have another one.
Oh yeah, that's good. Wow, what a shock. I wouldn't have known that. And then I think I met you maybe in what 2017 roughly.
Yep, I think that's about right.
And so from the time you were doing competitive swimming in college, did you do much activity after that, or?
Yeah, so when I was burning out on swimming, like I'd always been active, since I was such a young child. So the thought to like not train regularly was weird. I didn't know what to do with myself. And so I thought, well, okay, let's do something a little different, but still brings in my swimming background. So I started doing triathlons, which was fun for a little while, but I think I really just I wanted to find the couch, and so I couldn't keep myself training consistently in a way to compete the way I like to compete, and I don't like to go into things unprepared, and I always want to do the best possible. So because I wasn't training as well as I wanted to, and I wasn't competing as well as I wanted to, I just I stopped.
Okay, so those pictures you provided me, is that from your triathlon days?
Yeah, that was from when I was in grad school at USC. Those were my triathlon days. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So was that part of the school or?
Yeah, the school had it's like an intramural team. So it
Okay.
was a team that anyone could just sign up and be a part of and train with the club and compete with the club. So it
Yeah.
was fun. I just couldn't do it consistently for some reason.
Yeah, I mean every sport is different, and some float your boat more than others. But yeah, when I seen that, I was like, oh, okay. I knew you swam, but I didn't know you did the triathlons. Uh,
Yeah.
and
And it was
then
the running that I know you're a big avid runner, but man, the running was the worst.
yeah, I mean it's not easy. It could take a toll on you as well. And yeah, there's days where I don't feel like running as well. Everyone just thinks that I just want to run all the time, but that's not the truth.
I
And
always
then
joke my triathlons would just get progressively worse through each leg. So swimming, I would be like front of the pack. Then the bike, I would kind of drop to middle, and then the run, I'd drop to the end.
so do you do any biking now or
No,
swimming?
I hung up my bike quite a while ago, and I have not ridden it in years. But
Okay.
I fantasize about doing it again someday. But
And what about swimming?
Jiu-jitsu now.
Swimming? Any swimming?
I do a little bit of swimming. I actually hadn't swam in a while. I broke out my swimsuit not too long ago and I started to like just cross training because I've been injured so much. So I was like, let me try doing some swimming, low impact exercising. And it was fun. It kind of it brought it back a little bit. I was like, oh, I kind of miss this a little bit.
And then I wanted to know what was the intrigue in jujitsu? Was it just like, oh, I'll try it, or was there somebody that kind of
Yes, there was definitely somebody. So my husband and I had joined UFC Gym just to like get in shape and do something productive together. And so we joined and we started doing like kickboxing, and they had their little boot camp classes that were like kind of cardio circuits and things like that. And then Mauricio goes, "Oh, I've always wanted to try jujitsu," and I'm like, "Huh? I've never even heard of jujitsu. I've known you for how many years? I've never heard you say those two words. What in the world are you talking about?" And he points over to the mats and he goes, "Them, that's jujitsu, what they're doing over there." And I said, "No, hard stop. I'm not doing it. I don't even know how these people are getting a workout rolling around on the ground. Like, this is ridiculous." I was like, not doing it. And so he went and tried it anyway without me, and then kind of was like, just try it with me. And so then I tried it and I hated it, but he kept pulling me along, and I kept telling him, let's go back to kickboxing. And then I think it took like a couple months, but I eventually got bit with the jujitsu bug and was like, oh my God, I love it. I have to do it all the time.
yeah, it does take a little while, and I think especially for a guy, if you have a big ego and you're getting submitted, it takes maybe 6 7 months for you to be like, oh, okay, I actually enjoy this.
Yeah. It definitely took me some time. I think just because I was so out of shape, and I know what it's like to be in competitive shape. And so to be as out of shape as I was, and I had gained a ton of weight, it was very challenging. It was very difficult, and I couldn't move. And I was just like, I'm not ready for this. But I kept doing it, and it was just seeing those like small incremental improvements and realizing, oh, 3 weeks ago I couldn't do a forward roll or whatever it was. And then seeing those improvements kind of, I think that's what got me motivated to say, oh, wow, let's see how good I can do this.
Yeah, and then I know your husband too. He's still training as well,
Yep. He's still training.
and we'll get into the injuries, which is unfortunately part of the sport. But so from there, you start off for people that don't know, you start off as a white belt, and now you go to blue and purple, brown and black. So you're already a purple belt now. And how long has it been now that you've been training?
It's been a little over 4 years.
A little over 4 years. And in 4 years, if anyone goes to the athletic definition Instagram, you could see just a bunch of accomplishments that you have done. Very interesting. The one I want to touch on is the what is it, quadruple medals.
The quadruple gold at SJJIF World. Yeah.
Now for quadruple, so I know you can do like gi and no gi, and then absolute, which is where you get to fight. It doesn't matter the weight class. How did you get the fourth one, or how did that
So,
work?
yeah, it's exactly that. It was gi and no gi, weight division and absolute in both.
Oh, okay. So they had one for weight division as well.
Yes. So weight division gi, weight division no gi, and then absolute gi, absolute no gi.
Okay. And then you got to travel a lot for jujitsu as well, which is always fun. And
So
you
yes.
got to go to Portugal to compete.
Mhm.
I don't really know too many people who've gone, overseas to compete. At least not in jujitsu. How was that experience for you?
It was really cool. It's funny. After the UFC gym, we moved to Fight Studio in Upland, and it's huge competition gym. Like most of the students compete, which is abnormal. I find that the percentage of competitors is usually a bit lower in some gyms. But because everyone competed, we are always hearing people like, oh, I want to go to the Brazil Nationals, or oh, I want to go to the European Open. And so as white belts, we were just baby jujitsu players. We heard someone talk about the European Championship, and we're like, huh, that sounds interesting. And so we looked it up and we found out it was in Portugal, and we're like, let's go, let's do it. And so we went and we hooked up with a couple of people that were training at one of the sister gyms, and just had a really cool experience as white belts. I had a huge learning experience that first one. And then we ended up going back again the next year as blue belts, and I got double gold at that championship.
Oh wow, okay. So yeah, I would say going from UFC gym, which is I'll call it like maybe junior college for jiu-jitsu, and then going to a really competitive gym, that must have been very eye-opening for you.
Oh,
Did at any point maybe you thought this isn't for me, or
yeah, well, interestingly, I'm very grateful I started at the UFC gym because the UFC gym I think is definitely more geared towards beginners. It's a little more recreational, more chill, and at times it would get frustrating because we'd get that constant stream of new athletes in who are just trying jiu-jitsu out, but because of that we were constantly drilling the same moves over and over and over again, and it gave me such a good foundation. So when I went to fight studio, while my mind was blown, the things that we were learning, I was just like, how have I not learned this before now? I think that foundation I got at UFC gym made it so that I wasn't completely turned off by this like very competitive gym that was, fight studio.
and then like going from a UFC gym to fight studio, is there as many women competitors there for you?
It's growing every day. It's growing with the women. It definitely in the beginning, I don't feel like there were quite as many. But nowadays there's always other women in the classes, which is great. It's always good to see other women.
And one of the reasons I want to have you on, besides your record, and I try and spotlight people I know, is it's Women's History Month, and it wanted to see if there's any women like in sports or even jujitsu that have kind of giving you inspiration.
Yeah, I look into all of the female black belts that have come before, and even especially as like a super heavyweight female, I of course look to like Gabby Garcia and Kendall Rusey's another big one in like today's time that's just like killing it. And I just think of there's struggles that we're still experiencing now today, but I just can't even imagine what they were going through, like Gabby Garcia, what she was going through 10 years ago, when it was truly male dominated. I feel like we're getting to a point where we can almost stop saying that now about jujitsu. It is still a little male dominated, but there's so many women that are taking up jujitsu and have interest in it. So it's great to see that change and to be a part of it, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, really, you have become an ambassador for jujitsu and women, and I try to get. I think she's the sixth black belt ever. She was on the. I can't think of the name now. I always blank when I'm doing my show. I think her name is Felicia.
Felicia.
Uh, yeah, I invited her on. She's super busy, but yeah, I would love to get that whole perspective of how it was back then and how it is to now. But yeah, I see so many videos now on Instagram of women competing and women beating guys over and over again, and I enjoy that. It's funny to me, and I like it. I do jujitsu too, not as often as you. I had the pleasure of winning my Cadillac converter stolen, so been left carless, and so I only get to go once a week because of that. But I love to see just the women competitors. It's and they're really good. And when I roll with a girl versus a guy, they seem to use more technique than try to do brute force. So I enjoy that as well, because now it's more like flow than just
Yeah.
I'm going to muscle out of this one."
Well, as the brutal Viking, I like to bring that brute force into it. But it's so true. These women, like and it's, I think it's the same for just smaller people in general, men and women. They don't necessarily have that strength to capitalize on. So they're so technical. And we have some smaller females at my gym that are black belts, Natalie and Lavinia, and like their technique is just out of control. And like the fact that they can just use my weight against me and throw me around like it's nothing, it just blows my mind every time.
So
One day
speaking of,
I'm as good as they are.
yes, I mean, you keep training the way you do, and I'm sure you'll get there. I did want to, since you brought it up, Brutal Viking. How did you get that name?
So funny story. Um, I did not come up with that. It was actually UFC Gym. They sent out an email to their membership saying, "Hey, take this survey, find out your fighter name." And I was like, I had been doing jujitsu for like 3 weeks. I didn't know anything about anything. And it was asking questions like, "What type of grappler are you?" And I was like, "I don't know. I'm a submission grappler." And I answered the survey, and then Brutal Viking is what spit out at the end. And I was like, "Oh my God, that's amazing. I'm going to keep that." And then it kind of went viral. Like everyone loved it and started calling me Viking, and it's just stuff.
Yeah, I think you should change your name like a prince did.
Yeah,
So,
it's Viking.
and now that you've been doing it for so long, what would you say that what type of grappler are you now? What type of grappler have you evolved to?
I, if funny enough, I actually think I am a submission grappler. I'm always hunting for the submission, and unfortunately my submission rate isn't quite as high now that I'm a purple belt. But as a white and blue belt, my submission rate was like in the 90%.
Oh
Um,
wow.
I was just submitting everyone, which is always my goal. So I think I guessed correctly right at the beginning.
So do you prefer what is it, points, or do you prefer like no, what is it? No, I can't even see. I'm
Submission
blanking again. The no the no points competitions.
sub only. I definitely I, I don't dislike the points. I mean, the points, I don't know. I guess if I had to pick, I would say I would prefer sub only because I hate when people stall just and like try to get an advantage or whatever and then win by, something so ridiculous. And when it's sub only, it really pushes the pace and makes people move. And, you can't just sit there and, pretend to go for a submission and get an advantage and be like, "Oh, okay, I won." That's a bit
Yeah,
silly.
I agree with you. You know, I feel that I'd rather win going for the submission and if than stalling, or I don't know. It just doesn't seem like that I've really accomplished it. But that's my opinion right there. But
Stall in like 50-50 or whatever, and then like stand up at the end and get, 2 points. I don't know. Stuff like that bugs me. We should go for the submission.
and then you train gi and no gi and have competed in gi and no gi. Do you prefer one over the other?
Yeah, I think it's funny. It fluctuates. In the beginning, I preferred no gi. And then it fluctuated to I actually liked competing and training in the gi. And now it's kind of going back where I really do enjoy no gi. So I would love to do a lot more no gi than I'm doing currently.
Yeah, the no gi is a lot faster, a lot harder to hold on to people, and I,
Yes.
I would say maybe even harder to get submissions because if you don't get in the beginning, they're gonna slip right out.
They're going to be sweaty and slippery. Yeah. I think I actually like nogi for the reason that a lot of people hate nogi. And it's all of those things. Like, I like the fact that it's so hard to submit people because it goes
Mm,
both ways. If someone tries to submit me, it's easy to slide out of those dangerous positions, and I think it forces the pace. You can't like in gi, people just grab onto the lapels and just kind of like hold you there. Like I competed in gi worlds back in December, and the whole entire finals match, we just basically stayed in the same position the whole entire time. And I ended up losing that match, which, not ideal. But what was most devastating to me was that we didn't actually do any jujitsu, in my humble opinion.
mm.
We just sat there in the same position. It was super boring. And I was just like, wow, well, there you go. And in no-gi, that doesn't happen as often, which I really
Right, right. Oh, so that's something to think about for me in the future as I hopefully get back to competing one day. So how long did you do jujitsu before you started incorporating like weight training?
So I
Because I see you working out also in weight training.
Yeah, I think I started with my strength and conditioning coach probably within the first year of starting jujitsu. I had always, again, from my athletic past, I've always used to cross train with swimming, with either other types of cross training like running and sit ups and push ups, but also strength and conditioning. So, actual like lifting weights. So when I started competing in jujitsu, it just made sense to me. If I want to compete well, that's something I need to incorporate into it.
And how long before you felt the difference?
Oh, I think was improving immediately. I think, a lot of people will hit the gym, and this is the thing. I think there's really an art to strength and conditioning. And we go to the gym thinking, oh, yeah, do some, bicep curls and go on the treadmill. I don't know. It'll be fine. But I really think you need a coach. You need someone who knows what they're doing, knows the right movements for you, and also knows, like, something I love about my strength and conditioning coach is he knows I'm there for jujitsu. So while yes, I am trying to lift heavy things and get stronger in that way, it's always with the mindset of I'm doing this for jujitsu. So if I'm tired or if I'm feeling some sort of way, you know, I'm not going to push it at strength and conditioning because that's not my focus. My focus is jujitsu. And so I think having a coach who can really help guide you through your training and make sure you're getting the most out of it is so important.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think so many people train and weightlifting and they go like powerlifting or Olympic lifting style, but that's not their sport specific what they're going for. So they end up getting hurt or they won't really see the benefit that they could if they're training for that specific sport. So I
Yeah.
think it's very important to have someone like that. So how many times do you do like weightlifting, cross training like that?
Yeah, I do strength and conditioning 3 times a week.
3 times a week. And prior to the injuries, how many times are you doing jujitsu training?
That is usually 6 days a week.
So do you were you taking a day off, mixing the weight training with the jujitsu training?
Yeah, I would usually do like Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, where I would do the doubles of strength training and jujitsu, and then just do jujitsu like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then Sundays I'd try to have a chill day. But that didn't always happen because then I'd get excited and want to go to an open mat or do something else. So yeah.
So when was the first time you got an injury doing jujitsu, and what type of injury was it?
I I was very injured as a white belt, so I was injured all the time. I'm trying to remember like the first real injury I had. I think it was actually my shoulder. We were doing this like weird De La Hiva sweep move, and I kept as like the drilling partner. I kept falling on my shoulder as they were sweeping me, and I ended up spraining my AC joint.
Oh wow.
And so that took months to heal simply because I was stubborn and I didn't want to like rest. And so I just kept re-injuring it. That was really annoying. But I've had a slew of injuries since then. So
Any injury that maybe made you think, oh, maybe I don't want to do this anymore?
um I can't say any injury has ever made me go that far, but I've definitely had moments, especially with some of my most recent injuries, where I'm just like, oh man, I might be getting too old for this. I don't know how do I come back from this type of an injury and train with confidence, knowing that you can really hurt yourself. So, but that's usually a fleeting thought, and then I'm like, no, when can I train again? Let's go. Let's do this.
Man, that's amazing. 6 days of jujitsu and then 3 days of weight training. Usually, when I start mixing it up, the first couple of times I'm tired, or like I'll go home and I'll just fall asleep right away. Was that the case for you as well? Like when you first started doing like cross training?
I I think I'm a little abnormal because I get a little obsessive about things. So no, I didn't experience that too much because I always feel like regardless of how you're feeling, if you're tired, if you're, whatever it is, like just show up and do what you can do. Maybe you show up to jujitsu and you're super sore and you're tired or whatever the case may be. And maybe you can't train or roll at your best, but those are actually really great opportunities to work your technique and to train yourself to roll while you're tired. Because guess what? When you go to a competition, you're going to be tired at some point and you're going to be like, I don't want to spar anymore. I'm so tired, but you got to do it. So I'm the type who's just like, just do it. Just keep going.
And what type of injuries are you battling right now?
So in December, I actually herniated a disc in my neck.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that was a freak accident. I don't even think I could do again if I tried. I went to like basically Uchimata someone, but I was in a gym I wasn't very familiar with, and he had me up in a single leg, and my head was kind of buried into him, so I wasn't really aware of where we were in on the mats. And when I went to Uchimata him, and I turned and I looked, the wall was right there. And so in that like split second, I had to think of what I was gonna do. I tried to kind of forward roll, but like I was forward rolling like into the wall. And so I ended up with like landing on my head and neck with my body kind of inverted over me. And then he had nowhere to go, so he just like lawn chaired me. Um, yeah, not one of my finer moments. And the worst part was in my stubbornness, I was just like, oh, I'm fine. And I went to continue training. And I trained like the next 2 days after that. And it was by like the third day that I was like, oh, I'm really injured. Like I like lost feeling in my hand. I was like numb and tingly in my fingers. And I was in constant pain. Like I've never had an injury like that where it's just constant pain. Normally my injuries I've had in the past are like, oh, I do a certain movement and ow, that hurts. But this, it was like sitting, walking, sleeping, like no matter what I was doing, I was in pain. And so I was like, this is not good. That was when I realized like, oh God, I did something bad.
And so you're still dealing with that now?
It's mostly, I would say I'm like 99% healed from that. It took a good 2.5 to 3 months, but I'm no longer concerned like rolling and like having someone do like a heavy collar tie on me or anything like that. I think I'm pretty good. I'm not no longer like tingly, which I thought for sure I was like, I'm going to deal with this for the rest of my life. But no, it's healing. It's healing well. And I'm good from the neck, I think.
So did you go back to the doctor to get like clearance for that?
Yeah, no, I saw lots of doctors. I had an MRI done. I even saw a neurosurgeon just to make sure, like, because when I lost my muscles atrophied, I lost a ton of strength in my arm, and so I was getting concerned. But everything's healing nicely. I don't need surgery. I'm good to go.
I'm glad to hear that. And since you and your husband do train together, that must be pretty cool. Do you guys like at home when you fighting over the last whatever? Do you guys get into a jiu-jitsu match?
I'm always like, I'll be cooking dinner and then be like, oh, I learned this move today. Let me, and like, I'll be in the kitchen and like trying to, he's like, you're going to hurt me. Stop it. So I'm always like poking at him and going, oh, let me show you this move or let's do, and he's always like, oh, okay. And the worst part is we actually have a room that we laid down mats in. But of course, I never use the mat room. I always want to do it like in the kitchen or somewhere where there's like dangerous edges for him to hit his head on.
Oh, that's got to be a. You should just set up cameras so people can watch. Um,
I'm sure he'd love that.
so, uh, are you training still 6 days a week now since that happened to you, or are you slowly
I'm
going?
I'm trying to grow and learn and be aware of my body. So I'm training probably not 6 days a week, maybe more like 4 or 5 right now, because as I was coming back from the neck injury and I was like, oh, I'm ready to roll, I'm good. I busted my knee. So um, all of these things are like just kind of taking their toll. So I'm trying to learn to chill out a little bit and like let's go get back into this slowly and not re-injure myself again because I'm like I can't. It's these injuries, man. It really makes it challenging.
Oh, I'm sure. I know. I think you might have been there where I had when I got stitches from our good friend Thomas.
I remember that. Yes.
Yeah, I didn't even want to go to the doctor. That yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you to Coach Craig for making me go to the emergency room. Otherwise, I
Yes.
wouldn't have gone. I wouldn't have
That
gone.
was definitely the smart choice is to go to the ER.
And you know, I know you're dealing with injuries and coming back, but um, and you don't want to rush that for sure. But in later on as the year as you get healthier, do you have any competitions in mind or travel back to Portugal to compete?
Well, so funny story. While I am injured and I have not been training to the level that I like to train at, I actually am signed up for ADCC trials, which
Wow.
is in what, 2.5 weeks now? 2 weeks? It's coming up really fast. So I've made the decision that I'm going to probably make like a week of decision on whether I actually compete or not. If I can roll confidently and I don't feel concerned about my knee or my neck or whatever else may be going on, I will probably still compete. Just because it's a great experience. It comes around once every 2 years. So I'll probably do it if I can roll confidently in training. If not, if I'm still feeling like I have to train around my knee injury, I'll probably pull out of that. But then looking forward, we have Gi Worlds again because with COVID, the schedule was all off, which is why Gi Worlds was in December, and we're having it again in the end of May. So I'd probably start looking forward to that and make that my next competition.
Yeah, well, with COVID, everything got pushed back. I just did LA Marathon, and again, it's this week, and everything's kind of like all just moved around.
Yeah.
But at least things are getting back to normal, and you
Right.
know, yeah, competition and training and everything else. So, what would you say for you personally has been like any obstacles you had to overcome in jujitsu, or maybe like people's perception?
For sure. Yeah. I think being a female in jujitsu, we kind of already touched on this before, but being a female in jujitsu is already slightly challenging just because it is more of a male dominated sport. But that is changing. But just to kind of add to that is being a super heavyweight female in jujitsu. So by IBJJF standards, super heavyweight females are 180 pounds and over. And being a larger female in jujitsu has definitely posed some challenges. There's definitely poor perceptions. I remember even as a white belt competing in the finals of a jiu-jitsu world league competition, and I remember hearing what the my opponent's coach saying, "Don't worry about her. She's definitely tired," and saying things
Uh,
like that. And I can I might be making assumptions here, but I have to assume that that was because of my size. Maybe not, but the way he said it and the things he was saying, I was like, this coach, he could just go to hell.
hmm
And then I, of course, submitted her and showed him that I wasn't that tired. so, but like things like that, I'm constantly hearing things from the sidelines, getting the side eye. I've seen a competitor ask her friend, "Oh, you lost. Who did you lose to?" And I see them point at me, and then they roll their eyes, or make comments, and just because I'm bigger, so that's definitely been a challenge and something I've kind of spoken out about a little bit, where it's just like jujitsu is really for everyone. I think that no matter your age, your size, your gender, whatever it is, like it's for everyone. And anyone who has the balls to get out there and compete, like we should be lifting them up, not putting them down because of what they look like or who they are or whatever. So that's been my biggest challenge, I suppose.
yeah, we're living in a kind of strange time where you know, I kind of looked into fat phobia, and fat phobia, according some of the things I agree with and some things I don't agree with. Like they were saying that if you're bigger, that automatically makes you lazy, which that is not true. I know plenty of people who are bigger and they're not lazy. And no matter what, there's going to be people that eat right, work out, train 6 days a week, do weight training, and they're not going to be that small size. Doesn't mean that they're lazy, doesn't mean anything like that. But then I'm also kind of against the people that are, well, you're just shaming, and they're like basically giving themselves to have diabetes and high cholesterol.
Yeah.
So I'm like in between on that. It's very difficult, but I don't agree that everybody is lazy, and that perception does have to change. And
I
it's tough because of that.
Yeah, I think something interesting for people to consider is that just because someone's thin doesn't necessarily mean they're healthy. You could have a thin person who's got sleep apnea and has high cholesterol and diabetes and all those things, and you can have someone larger who's in perfect health. So, I mean, the outsides can be deceiving. Now, I would never recommend. I know it's like you said, it's a kind of a weird time where they're almost promoting, like, I hate to say it this way, but like fatness. And I definitely don't promote that. I think that we all need to, try to be as healthy as possible and be active and do things that promote health, and not just kind of relinquish ourselves to being fat. But I think that it makes me think of a competition where I actually got like a highlight reel on Instagram, and one of the comments was someone saying, "Oh, yeah, she can win this tournament, but can she beat diabetes?" And
Oh
it's like,
wow.
not, I'm not even pre-diabetic. I'm like not even close to being diabetic. I'm actually probably more healthy than a lot of people in this day and age. And so it's just comments like that where I'm like, just because of my size, people automatically assume I'm in poor health, or that, like you said, that I'm lazy, or, I'm tired. And it's like, okay.
Yeah, being skinny does not mean you're in
Yeah.
good shape either, or healthy. I think a lot of people miss the health and fitness part. So the health part is way different than having muscles. You could be taking steroids and have muscles doesn't mean that you're in great shape. And even a lot of the people, depending on their sport, and if they're taking steroids later on, they're paying the price. They're
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a I was actually reading an article about that today, and I learned a new term. I think, and it was kind of regarding me. They, according to this, I have a. I'm pulling it up right now. I think she said, uh, "What?" It's funny. Some of the new terms that people come up with. Uh, Man, well, there's fat phobia, which I try to look it up, and I don't think it's officially a word in the dictionary yet. Because I've tried to do shows on that. Because, like I said, it is a very strange time. But I think she called it like fitness privilege, or no, skinny privilege. I was
Mhm.
like, oh, I didn't know that. I'm like, I have skinny privilege, I guess. But at the same time, like she was talking about how she's getting over her eating disorder. But growing up, I know I was told, hey, you're skinny, I bet you could eat anything. And I could have taken that and just start eating junk. And the same thing, being called, I guess, skinny privilege could mentally hurt me as well. That's another thing that I think people need to work on. And I feel jujitsu is a great tool for it, is mental strength. Because uh, comments like that, especially in today's world, Instagram and things like that, where people could just be keyboard warriors and leave comments, and then you look them up and it's like user 1 2 3 4. It's like, come on.
That
Uh,
happens to me all the time. The trolls always have like a fake profile, and I'm like, man, I want to call you out so bad, but you were smart with your
yeah.
fake profile.
And so how did you deal with just having to take time off during the pandemic? Did that affect you a lot in your training?
It's funny, in the beginning of COVID. So I have pretty bad asthma. And I've got so many ailments apparently. I have pretty bad asthma. So in the beginning of COVID, I was genuinely concerned because I've had, like, when I was a kid, my asthma was much worse than it is now. But like, I'd gotten an ear infection that sent me to the hospital because my asthma flared up so poorly. So I was like, if I get COVID, am I going to die? And so for probably about 6 weeks, I was strictly isolating, and my husband still had to go into work every day. And I was like making him, I was like, throw your clothes in the wash. And we were, doing the silly stuff, wiping down our groceries when we bring him home. And he was doing all the shopping. And after about 6 weeks of it, I was just, my mental status was so bad because I had just been sitting in my home, not going anywhere, sitting there in fear. And I was just like, I, I need to do something. And so we actually started, we contacted our professor and was like, hey, let's do like a private lesson, minimize contact. And it was funny. My professor showed up. I thought he was going to show up with another partner so he could do the moves on like someone he lives with. And like my husband and I would just do the moves together. But he showed up on his own. And so he was showing the moves on my husband, who was then coming and training with me. And I'm like, the shtick is up. And it's like, it's over. It was like, I'm not isolating anymore. And it was after that, I just basically went back to training regularly. And, I left the house like a normal human being. And I apologize to those who really isolated hard for 2 years, but I couldn't do it. I had to get back to my life, and just I was like, YOLO. If I die, I die.
Yeah, that's very tough. I can't remember what I was watching. Maybe it was Joe Rogan or some other doctor. They were talking about Japan, and I hope I'm not giving misinformation here, but they're Japan's not like a third world country. They're affluent, and I think I heard that more people died from suicide than from actual COVID during 2020.
I would not doubt that.
So I mean, the mental toll of isolation and just your whole world flipping upside down is something difficult. And like I'm so glad we're getting over that. Yesterday my guest is in was in lives in Hong Kong, so they're still going through it. So man, I couldn't imagine going through that again. And I knock on wood, hopefully we don't go through that again.
Yeah,
um,
I hope not, because I that was my thing. I was like inconsolable for like 4 days. I was just constantly in tears. I could not that at the end of that 6 weeks. That's when I was just like, I I can't live this way. And so I for me personally, it was worth the risk to go back out into the world and, just whatever happens, happens. So
And so now that you're overcoming your injuries and slowly but surely, where's the if you do decide to compete the AC DC? Where's that? Is that in Dubai? The one
it's
you're?
the ADCC trials, so it's the North American trials, and this is the West Coast trials, so it's in Las Vegas.
Oh, okay, okay. That because the original one's in Dubai, right? Or the?
Yeah, I think originally that's where it was held, but now it's being held. Even so, the trials. So the way it works is it's kind of like the Olympics of grappling. So they have trials in various countries around the world. They identify the top grapplers from trials who then get the invite to the actual like ADCC competition, and so that also is held in Las Vegas. So that'll be in September of 2022.
And then looking at your highlight reel of all the different matches, you were ranked number one and number two in a lot of different competitions and in the world. How do you stay hungry? How do you keep the eye of the tiger when you see a ranking like that? Does that make you want to work harder to keep it, or does that make you just like, oh, I'm number one, I could slack off?
No, for me, I when I'm on the top, that's actually the scariest place to be in my opinion, because you know that there are 10 people or more that are vying for that position and they are working hard specifically to beat you. So to me, to be sitting on the top, like that's the most dangerous place to be, and that makes me want to work even harder because like that everyone's studying your game, everyone's studying how you move and the things that you do, and I don't know, being number one's tough.
And what would you say, without giving too much for your opponents? Do you have any top favorite submissions you'd like to do?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it's no secret. They already know. I love doing arm bars, so I'm always like scrambling to get that like best position, and so I'll often find myself in like full mount, and I love going for that S mount arm bar, gi or no gi. I'll do it either way. In the gi though, I do really love bread cutters, which if my husband's listening, he'll be like, "That's my move." He spent 3 years trying to teach me how to do a bread cutter, and I was like, I don't understand it. I don't care. I'm never going to do this anyway. And then one day the light bulb went off, and I was like, oh, I love this move. I love this submission, and I do it all the time now.
Have you got to do it on him?
Of course.
When you guys train, do you guys like train like because you're trained so much at the gym? Do you guys train besides that at home? Besides like just the messing around or?
No, we don't really train too much at home. We tried at the beginning of COVID to train at home, and that just was a disaster. It's just not the same as going to a gym and feeling that energy of everyone training together. So for me, it's not my favorite thing to like try to do drilling and stuff at home.
And then I think for the people that don't, and that's my neighbors' kids, I think screaming. For the people that just know jujitsu, I think most people think of it as just like a individual sport, but you're part of Team Checkmat. Uh, what would you like? How would you describe a team atmosphere in jujitsu?
It's interesting. I've been a part of a lot of teams, and I think growing up on club teams or on college teams and things like that, you know, there's this inherent camaraderie because we're all in the same school together, and we're all like like I went to USC, so we're all like Trojans, fight on. Jiu-jitsu is different because you have so many different people from so many different walks of life. You have some pro athletes, you have professionals like myself who are just finding time to train and compete, and you have everything in between. So it's interesting. You still have that camaraderie of the team, but it's a little I would say a little more dynamic maybe. So it, it's definitely a team sport. And you definitely like the LA Open is happening this weekend. I'm not competing, but I'm going to go and I'm going to support my teammates and be there to cheer them on and watch everyone kick ass. So I really appreciate being a part of the Checkmat family.
Yeah, to me, like your team is important because, kind of like you were mentioning, when you just get a bunch of people coming, there's a higher chance of injury. Especially not to knock white belts because they help keep grow the sport, but sometimes they can be a little spazzy or they don't want to get submitted, and then you have a higher chance of injury. So, really having partners that you can trust, to me, is part of the team, especially in jiu-jitsu. And the LA Open, see, I think I saw two competitions going on in jiu-jitsu this weekend. Uh,
Yes. There's also
so
happening.
one of them's at APU, right?
That's
It's,
LA Open.
that's the LA Open, and I thought I saw another one going on. Is it the Naga, Los Angeles?
Yeah, in Upland, I think it's.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I grew up in Azusa, so to me, it's like a dream come true that, oh, in Azusa there's actually jiu-jitsu, and it's some of the biggest competitions, when
Yeah,
before no one even knew of that city or anything like that. And the year I did it, I got to run a marathon in Azusa, which they no longer have, and I got to compete in jiu-jitsu worlds in Azusa. So that was very cool for me, like just my hometown. So uh, I would go, but I'm running LA Marathon. I know Coach Craig is going to be competing.
they'll be competing. Yep.
And is your husband competing?
No, he's not competing. He just went through the police academy actually and graduated in January. So he was out of the training scene for a little while, and he's just getting back into it. So I know he's signed up for the what is it, the fire and police games or something like that. And so there's a jujitsu competition he's doing there, and I know he's looking to do some more competing like at the end of the year.
Yeah, I think him having that jujitsu background, becoming a police officer, especially with the dangers it is now, is very beneficial. And I'm glad. I see sometimes, and I'm no expert, but I see sometimes like the script, like the scrambles that the officers are doing, and I'm like, man, they can't even hold one person down, and
Yeah.
that just shows how little trained. I feel it should be mandatory,
Yeah.
as a police officer, that you
And
should.
it's so interesting. A lot of these departments do training, but it's like once a year or once every 2 years. And it's like being in jujitsu, like I know you can't learn anything once a year. I'm sorry. Like you need to be doing it every day or, at least a few times a week to really like ingrain those skills. Otherwise, it's a lost cause, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I know it has to do with funding as well, like for them, and they have the time to go and do that. But maybe more of them if they would do it after, which I'm sure it could be tough with the crazy hours they work. But
Yeah.
I feel that would help a lot with some of maybe these premature things that we've seen, and especially in the last couple of years of violence. So I have police.
They should incentivize it. Like they have incentives. They'll pay police officers like if they're bilingual and like have these other skill sets. They should incentivize it. Oh, if you're a blue belt, you get this much money. If you're purple belt, brown belt, black belt,
Oh, that's a great idea.
you know,
That,
there's ways, and then it's on the officer to acquire the skill, but then they get compensated, $100 a month or whatever for having the skill.
So I learned today about USC having a tri club, which I didn't know they had that. When I was boxing, I went to USC. They have a boxing club, and I got to box against them. Which prior to that, I had no idea that they had a boxing club. But uh,
They
it's
have lots
like,
of clubs.
yeah, and the fighters there were good, and it was like intense just going to that part of LA and just go walking in there and seeing everybody. I'm like, USC has boxing, and they were good. They were good. I learned a lot. Um,
Yeah.
so uh, I wanted to know if there's any like sponsors, anybody you want to give a shout out to in your journey that you've been
I
on so far.
I would love to. So, one of my favorite sponsors is Gadama. They are a women's only like nogi uh, apparel, and I don't know what that was. They do nogi wear for women specifically. I actually do think they are going to start venturing into menswear though, which is exciting because I've had a lot of guys ask me about my spats. They love them. So, but they're such an awesome like women focused women owned by a female grappler business, and they really do right by their sponsor, their ambassadors rather. And I basically wear their stuff all the time. And they are breaking into so many different areas of the grappling scene, such as like equipment bags, and they're starting to produce a gi, which I'm super excited about. And I've heard like little things about them wanting to create a singlet for wrestlers. So lots of things happening with Gadama. Also, Rollwear Jiu Jitsu is another apparel company that I'm an ambassador for. So they have some cool Jiu Jitsu related t shirts and things like that. Nexio CBD. If you are looking for some CBD supplies, I would definitely check Nexio out. I love their CBD gummies. Um, Lean Feast. Lean Feast is a meal prep company that I use, and they are phenomenal. The two locations I work out of are Glendora and Upland. So if you want to check out any of these companies, I on my Linktree URL, there's all my codes for discounts and things. So save yourself some money.
Great, yes, and thank you for Sam and Howard and I think Gail and everybody else who's been in and out of the audience. And also, it's streaming on Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, and for the people who will listen on the podcast, thank you. And I will also have that link tree up on the podcast notes. So if you do want to take advantage of discounts, you're more than welcome to. And then if people wanted to follow your jujitsu journey adventures, how could they do that?
Through my Instagram, which is brutal underscore Viking underscore BJJ. That's probably your best way.
And if you follow her, you have to be a real user. You cannot be user 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yes, please actually be a real person and not a troll.
Yes, no trolls. Um, is
You
there
know what?
anything?
The trolls keep things exciting. It's all good. I feel like if you got the trolls, you must be doing something right.
Right, right. If it's one thing I learned from watching WWE for years, it's you either got to be loved or hate, which means the crowd's got to cheer you or boo you. They're, in between, you're not doing something.
Yeah. Look at Conor McGregor.
Oh yeah. Now
Over.
is there anything that maybe I missed that you wanted to touch on, or
No, I think we got a lot in.
we did? And like I said, I wanted to bring you on because I since I've known you and I know how I think most people say the blue belt's the most difficult belt to get, but the Gracies did a breakdown quite a few years back, and it's how the most difficult belt to get is your white belt to actually walk into the gym for the first time,
Yeah.
and then most people when they get their blue belt quit, and it's a very small percentage. So to see you progress, start your journey and evolve to what you are. I definitely want to bring you on and spotlight you because I think it's important. A lot of people, like how we were talking, there's all kinds of different shapes and sizes and people in jujitsu. It, in my opinion, is for everybody, and there's people out there probably listening who maybe will get inspired. You never know the generations of people that you can inspire, and I think to me that's what it's all about, having a good positive impact overall.
Yes,
So
for sure.
thank you so much for taking the time out, and I hope you speedy recovery in your injuries, and look forward to seeing you continue your fitness journey and kick some butt in the tournaments.
That's the plan.
All right. Thank you so much for being here. I will be back next week with my Women History Month continuation. I can't confirm the guest yet, but she is a pro golfer, and I'm just waiting to confirm the dates. And who knows what other surprises I will have. Thank you, everybody. This has been Athletic Definition, episode 91. Thank you, Bro Viking.
Thank
And
you.
this is Coach Ray Z. I'm out.